Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first series of the Untold Journey podcast with me, Mahalet Abraham. For decades, as we all know, young people and women have played critical and noticeable role in contributing to the peace and security in the Horn of Africa through advocacy and lobbying for the implementation of different policies. The effort of youth and women usually and their stewards go unnoticed and undocumented. We have seen this through their different roles, but their roles have been undocumented and unnoticed. So this podcast series wants to shed lights to the tremendous journey of individuals that have contributed to peace and security and stability in the region. Today, with this series, we have joined by a young woman, Juan Racheal from South Sudan. Juan Racheal is a peace and advocacy coordinator at South Sudan Council of Churches. She will be taking us through her personal journey. We will talk about what she has done, her challenges, where she is now, and where she wanted to be in the future as well. I'm very excited as we going to dive through her personal journey, and she's doing an amazing job, not just only in South Sudan, but also to the continent. Juan, we are very honored to have you in the first episode of the Untold Journey podcast, the youth series. How are you doing? How's Juba? You are in Juba, right?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Juba is hot as usual. It's supposed to be a rainy season, but it's a bit humid. But of course, home is home, and I really love being here. Juba is fine. It's mostly calm, and people are going about their businesses as normal, regardless of the challenges, of course, that they're facing. But home is home.
Yeah, of course, definitely. Home is home. We are so humbled to have you today. Thank you so much for accepting us to be a guest for our first podcast. So we just dive to our conversation, right, Joanne? So when people ask us about who is Joanne, who is she? So how do you describe yourself?
Oh, this question is usually a challenge to many young people because we don't know how to describe ourselves. We don't know if the person is asking us professionally or personally. But I would just say Juwan is an African and she's South Sudanese. She's very passionate about peace, involvement of youth in decision making, and very passionate about human rights and ensuring security and welfare for young people. My profession is a diplomat. I did governance and international relations, and I'm also a lecturer for political science in University of Juba. I'm very outgoing, very easygoing. And also very passionate about decolonizing our history as African people and also rewriting the history for young people in Africa.
That's really amazing, Joanne. I didn't know that you are a lecturer too. At this young age, being a program person as well as academia is a really amazing job. So it's very interesting to know that. And I have seen that even in person, you are outgoing, so charming, playful. So it's good to know you as well. So it's interesting to know that you are also interested working in peace and security. So just to ask you, what initially sparked your interest in human rights, peace and security, right? Everyone has something. It might be your childhood, it might be someone you have seen or what you have seen in your country. What does really sparked you at first, initially, to get interest in human rights, peace and security?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm from South Sudan, and we have evolved in an environment and a society full of conflict. And I have witnessed what young people have gone through, what other people have gone through, what communities have lost, and what they're hoping for. I've also been directly involved. I've been attacked at home with my family. And so that sparked my willingness to fight for human rights and advocate for human rights. And also, I grew up as a refugee outside my country because, you know, when war breaks, we run and we leave behind our identities, we leave behind our property, we leave behind who we are. And if our communities and our families do not do well enough to build us, to remind us of where we come from, then we lose everything. So growing up as a refugee and then later on as a town or city refugee, that showed me that I need to fight for people to go back to their countries and live with dignity and also have security. So that sparked off from my personal experience of witnessing directly and also having the need to live in my own country. That's how I became so passionate. And I also got some education where I understood what it means to have human rights, what it means to have security and well-being for everyone. And I wanted to be part of that community that contributes to human rights, security, and also wellness for everybody.
Yeah, I can tell that your journey to this issue is not easy. You know, being refugee now, you came back to your home and doing amazing job to support your community is really very interesting, Joanne. You know, like we go dive to your journey, and when we talk about the challenges that the African youth faces is one is high unemployment rate, right, which can lead to frustration and social unrest. We also have like lack of access to quality education, which hinders young people ability to find decent jobs, right? We also go to the leadership issue of youth engagement, and we can see that youth are very or highly excluded from decision-making processes, right? Often they feel like their voices are unheard. It might be by the government, their government, or also in institutions. In addition to that, we as African youth, we also faces also we are very exposed to conflict and violences that you also exposed while you were a grown-up child, right? So this exposure to conflict and violences, we have seen like civil war, we have seen ethnic tensions, and also some extremist groups threatening the safety and security of young people, right? So the challenges are multifaceted, and also there are many for African young people. So it would be great to hear also your experience that has shaped your understanding of human rights, peace, security, and democracy, and the challenges that are faced by the youth.
Yes, I will start with my own experience. When I was young, of course, from the 1990s, there's been conflict in South Sudan. So I was not hearing the gunshots. But as I grew, I was hearing the gunshots and I was hearing people running from their communities and seeing people dying and with no food to eat. They have no shelter. So they are also faced with the climate change and all the changes that come with the environment. So you constantly see people with a thirst for peace, a thirst for stability. And as I grew, I was built with that conviction to make sure that everybody is safe. And as a child from South Sudan, I think everyone knows that every family has lost somebody. I've also lost my sister during the conflict, so that is a very personal experience for me, and that's what also pushed me to also ensure that I'm part of the group that ensures that there is peace and security in Africa, and most especially including young people because they can share their experiences of the conflict. And as a young person, there are also many challenges that we could face. And it comes to decision making where we are excluded because they believe that as young people, we don't have the experience, we don't have the knowledge. But bringing our needs to the table is enough for us to share, to be part of the decision making table. So I think that's the major challenge that young people face, but also manipulation, because as young people, you're not employed, you don't have a source of livelihood. And somebody comes up and tells you that if you join the conflict and you take a gun, you will be given money, you'll be given food, you'll be given shelter. So you will be part of the movement, you'll be part of the conflict, you will be a perpetrator. So the manipulation that young people face is still ongoing up to now in many parts of Africa. And for South Sudan, I'll speak for also the child soldiers. As young as you are, you're supposed to be in school. But because you don't have a livelihood, you don't have a family that will take you to school, you are drawn to joining the conflict so that you can survive. So looking at our youth, our naivety, if I may, they use that as a leverage for us as young people. So those are the challenges that we face as young people, especially in the Horn of Africa, North Africa, and East Africa, because there's extremism and there's a lot of violence. And they used our naivety and our inability to have livelihoods for our survival.
It's very difficult. I'm really sorry for your loss, Joanne. Of course, the effect of the impact of conflict, we even like in Ethiopia, we are also having conflicts here and there. If you go to Sudan, there is a conflict, ongoing conflict. If you go to Somalia, it's the same. It's almost in all of Horn of Africa countries we are experiencing this conflict, and the impact is not easier. You know, it's not just only destruction of property. It's not just only people being displaced, but at the same time we are losing our loved ones, our families, right? So it's very, very difficult to experience that, to be honest. I know that you are working in faith-based organization. I would like to hear more about that, and how did you get involved in working in those issues?
As somebody who is working in a faith-based organization, I think it's one of the best jobs because faith-based organizations have legitimacy and credibility to do the best work of peace. How churches work in South Sudan, and how influential they are. So I said, why not join the movement of people that are influential and very legitimate and credible, especially in communities. So I became part of it. I was trained through it and understood what mediation means, what conflict resolution means, without having to put a PowerPoint to tell what peace is, but to listen from them what they understand by peace, for them to share their this. So I was really excited for the first time to see communities open up about their grievances and also give the solutions. And the church also exists in all communities. You will find in every village or any, because we have counties, we have bombers, and we have states. In every village, you will find a church. It might just be a tree under a tree where people convene and they have the cross of Jesus. So seeing people understanding how important it is for faith to lead their lives, to influence their lives, is what drew me to work with the South Sudan Council of Churches. And the fact that many churches come together to resolve shared issues is what was very intriguing for me. And that's why I continued to stay with them and also understand how they can play a big role in influencing young people. So I was drawn by the uniqueness of the churches.
Of course, definitely, especially the faith-based organizations, they offer like it's not just only one sector that you will be specialized, right? You will have like many experiences, and you go work at grassroots level. You don't do only policy level or at higher level, but you go to community level. You work with different communities, so it's a great opportunity. Definitely, maybe it would be great to if you would share us one of a story that you or it might be your organization made a positive impact on a young person's lives or a community in general.
So there was a time when a conflict sparked in one of the areas of South Sudan, and that's the eastern part of South Sudan, eastern Equatoria. And the youth there are heavily armed and they keep cattle, they're cattle keepers, and they do a lot of raiding. And so their conflict led to the death of about 26 people, and most of these were women. And so that touched the church, and we went to Eastern Equatoria and listened to the people about what happened. And we advocated for the young people to put down their arms. So one young person was inspired by the sermon from the church leaders. And he said from today on, he's going to put his gun down and he's going to go to school. So that young man from Eastern Equatoria was brought to Juba and taken to school by the South Sudan Council of Churches. And today he's in a tertiary school. He's going to be a carpenter. So he changed his life listening to the church leaders and put down his gun, and he encouraged other young people. Of course, there are challenges when it comes to cattle keepers and guns, but at least we were able to change the life of that one person who changed his whole family. So that was very inspiring for us, seeing he is one of the strongest young people that has committed so many atrocities, but he knelt down and said, I am sorry, and today I'm putting down my gun and bringing an end to this killing. Because I'm a young person, I do not want to throw my future away. So that story really touched me, and I was able to experience it while we were doing our work in Eastern Equatoria.
That's quite interesting. It's good to learn that young people are now drawn to peace. They are working towards peace. It's really interesting to hear that story. To be honest, we can't neglect or just go aside of the role of faith leaders that are doing in our communities, especially on peace and human rights. We can see that they are playing a major role in the community. So it's very interesting story. Thank you for sharing with us, Joanne. Maybe now I'll go to your, we have seen your successes, not just only your stories, but also your organization doing a great contribution. Now we go to your challenges, because we all face challenges, and at a young age being in leadership position, because now you are leading a team, right? You are peace and advocacy coordinator at your position. So it's not easy, right? The journey is not easy to be on that leadership role. So I just want to hear also your challenges. What are your biggest challenges? You know, when you are young and woman, it will be double challenge, right? It's not easier. And when you grew up in a society like us within Africa, where patriarchy plays a major role, it's are close to you as well. So it's good to hear what were those challenges for you, and also how do you overcome them? What was the solutions you did to overcome those challenges? Maybe I'm sure the audiences also would like to hear about that.
Thank you, Mahlet. As you mentioned, as a young woman, that is double discrimination. So when I started my work at the South Sudan Council of Churches, and as you know, in most churches, the leadership is by men. So, and they're not very drawn to having women in decision-making positions.
Yep.
So that was the first challenge I faced, and that was having conversations with church leaders. These are big people, I'll put it in quotes, these are big people in the church. So, and I lead an advocacy task force, which is made up of these church leaders, and they're all men. So my challenge was them listening to what I have to say. I'm a young person and I'm a woman. So a young woman, it was really challenging for me to put my message across. But how I addressed this was just learning their temperaments as men first, and also as church leaders, so that they really understand what I have to say. And also blending in. It's very important to blend in and listen, because you're a young person and you have to listen to your elders. So I listen, also give my opinions. And along the way, we were able to understand each other. And then you give what you have to offer and make them understand that you're not here as a church leader, but as a technical person who wants to support the church. So that was how I overcame that challenge of the double discrimination. So now I look at them as my fathers, I listen to them, and then we work together on the decisions that we make. It may be policy decision, it may be also how we engage with communities. So it has been an interesting journey for me, very challenging in the start. It was very hard for me to start a conversation, but then I spoke to them and I understood how they work, and they also listened to me. The other challenge is the culture in our communities. It's not easy to see a young person to speak among men. Again, the challenge of the patriarchy. So they thought that I was coming to change the minds of their young people, the young women in their community, so that they don't listen to their elders. But the approach I used was that I am just part of the committee that goes. So we will have a group of church leaders to speak, and then they will ask me to say one or two things that does not contradict with the cultures of that community, and then make them understand that these are educated people who want the best for the community. So what I learned in the challenges that I faced as a young person is that dialogue is important. Making people understand what you are calling for is important. You don't need to be hard-headed, because there is this idea that young people are hard-headed and they want to be listened to, but sometimes we just need to listen. Another challenge as a young person in South Sudan is mobility. As you know, climate change is a serious issue, and being able to reach out to communities has also been very challenging for us because of the roads, because they're inaccessible and we want to reach the communities. So what we do is to switch our planning. You plan in the days that there are no rain so that you're able to reach out to these communities. So the collaboration with all the stakeholders and our church leaders has been how I've been able to reach to where I am today. But the key is listening.
So of course, I can tell that your journey is not easy, because it's working with church leaders, and also the culture that we have in the community is also another challenge, and also the environmental factors that you are working on, also that's another challenge, and it's not easy. But I can tell that you are a good leader, and I'm very proud of you, because you mobilized people to your ideas and to your goals. That's what leadership is, to be honest. So I am very proud of what you are doing, and it's really interesting to hear your story. So, Juan, at the same time, it will be also good to hear about the strategies that you have found throughout your work experience and your journey that are effective in promoting human rights, peace and stability in among young people, because you also worked with young people, right? So what are those strategies that you have found which are very effective?
Worked really is the context-oriented approach, because there is no way I'm going to, maybe the communities in different parts of the country are different. So you have to understand how the area works, how the context is, what are the challenges that they face are, so that you know the approach that you will take. So for me, it has been context oriented. The way, I don't know if you've heard about Upper Nile, which is Malakal, the way Malakal, the youth in Malakal behave is not the same as the youth in Central Equatoria South Sudan behave. So understanding the context first is very important. So context-oriented is a strategy that I think that has really worked for us in the area of human rights, peace, and security. And then second is involvement of young people from the start of your program, for example. They need to be involved on what you want to do, because you need to seek out on the challenges they face and what are their priorities. And that's why earlier on I talked about listening. So the listening works in everything. So a strategy of listening to communities is very important. To young people is important. What do they need? What kind of training do they need? You may assume that they need training in human rights, and maybe that's not what they need. They need justice. So your approach will be different because you listen to their issues. So I think these are the two strategies that have worked for us, South Sudan Council of Churches, and as for me as a young leader, first is the context orientation, and then second is the listening to the issues, to ensure that you are giving them the right training, to ensure that your interventions are syncing with the challenges that they are facing.
Definitely. I have also picked up from your discussion about also having dialogues, encouraging young people to have dialogues, because you were also saying you had a dialogue with church leaders to come in agreement, right? So it's good also to encourage dialogues between young peoples with different also religion, not just only within one religion, but also it's good to have it on interfaith dialogues, to encourage to have that, so that they promote tolerances, they understand and reduce also the risks of conflict field of religious tensions, right? At the same time, now we are in a digital era at the same time. So many of young people their own social media, different platforms, right? So it's good also to leverage that technology and to have like active involvement of advocating for peace and stability in their country, in the continent, and also worldwide, so to be honest. So that's also a good one. Thank you, Juan. So maybe as you are also a young woman in a leadership position, it's also good to hear about your thoughts about the role of youth in leadership. So not just only role of youth, but also women in leadership in addressing those challenges that we have discussed.
Women bring uniqueness to the table, and especially young people. And I think when we involve the voices of young people, they are usually genuine and they include the challenges that people actually face. So bringing them to the table to discuss, especially in mediation, especially in conflict resolution, is very important. And the representation also. When you don't involve young people and women in particular, where is the representation? It means that you don't acknowledge their existence in that community or in that country. So their voices and their views need to be brought to the table. And another thing that women really do well is the advocacy. They have the power and they have the zeal and the influence to advocate for peace, security, and human rights. And these women have also convening power. They're able to bring people together under a tree. If your mother calls you now, Mahlet, you will show up, right?
Yeah,
You will show up.
true.
So women and youth have that convening power of bringing people together. And that is what we take leverage on that. So the role that they play is not only at the policy level, but at the community level. And at the community level is where the challenges are really faced, is where the solutions are brought to the table. So bringing their voices up, having them in positions of decision making. In one of our communities in South Sudan, we have a chief, a woman, she's a chief, and she's a very strong judge. So seeing her doing the work that she does really shows that women have a big role to play. She brings people together. She's also very tough when it comes to the constitution, when it comes to justice. So advocacy is one of the roles that women and youth play. Decision making is another role. And then the representation, bringing everything to the table, the uniqueness. And you know, women, as you asked in particular, women are the custodians for welfare. They're always thinking about their children. And for the youth, they're always thinking about their future. So if we include women and youth, you can imagine the magic that could happen.
Can imagine. It's really interesting to hear that, Joanne. It's sometimes, you know, when we wanted youth and women to be in the table, people feel like they are taking some share from someone and they are giving as if it's not their right to be seated in the table. So it's all about they are asking for fair shares, because we know that 60% of the total population in Africa is youth. The same for women, 50 plus as women. So they are asking for fair shares to be seated in the table to discuss on those issues which impacted their lives, right? So they have to be in the table, they have to discuss, they have to be represented. So it's a good example that you shared with us also. Traditional leaders, also local leaders that we have, if we encourage to have more women, we can see their impact in their community. We can see also in conflict resolution mechanisms that you mentioned, mediation, negotiation. We saw like women like playing a major role and contributing to the peace and stability. So they have to be represented. It is human rights. Representation is a human right. It's not just you know, it's give and take kind of thing. So thank you, Joanne, for highlighting that for us as well. So going forward and looking forward, of course, we all hope and we all dream for our country, for our continent, right? So I would like to hear about your hopes and dreams for the future of human rights, peace and security in Africa. What are those hopes?
My hope is that we decolonize our understanding of these three issues: human rights, peace, and security. We need to understand it in the African context. And as Africans, we have our ways of resolving conflict. of settling disputes. And that's what we need to promote. We cannot have issues that come from outside to solve our own issues. So decolonizing this is very important. And when it comes to human rights, you've heard about young people leaving Africa to look for greener pastures, which I'm putting in quotes because the grass is only green where it is watered. So my hope is that our leaders will play their role in ensuring that the welfare of all Africans is taken as a priority in Africa. And as the African youth, we have a slogan of Africa, my home, my future. So you want to live in Africa, you want to die in Africa. And we don't want to talk about survival, we want to talk about thriving. So decolonizing these issues is very important. And my hope is that all young people will be empowered to reach their full potential, and they will be able to put down their guns. And we have all guns silent, and we have young people going to school, having food to eat, and thinking about how they can build another future, because these issues are intergenerational. If we don't do something now as young people, it will also continue with the generation that we will produce. So we need to think about working right now. So my hope is that we will have Africa as our home and our future.
Thank you so much for sharing your hopes and dreams, Joanne. It's not just only your dream, it's all African young people dream to see Africa prospers and the young people being in their home, Africa, and contributing to the future of Africa. So thank you for sharing that. It's good to hear also your advice to young people who wanted to make difference in their country, to the continent, and to the globe as well.
My advice would be involved. Young people need to be involved. Include yourself. Nobody is going to say, oh, you come. You are, as a young person, you're supposed to be on the table. You have to involve yourself. So it's important for young people to involve themselves, but they also have to equip themselves with their skills so that they're able to involve themselves. And another thing is about listening, because most times we say our elders have nothing to offer, but they are a pool of the knowledge and experiences that that's all we need to know. And then we can contextualize it with what is happening right now. But it's important that we listen to our elders, and then we also involve ourselves in all processes. Let us not fear. Let us do what we can with all that we have.
Thank you so much, Joanne. It's really interesting to hear your advices about claiming the space. Sometimes the space is there, the opportunity is there, but we don't claim them. Unless, as you said, unless we claimed it, we won't get the table, right? We won't get the chair to sit and discuss our issues. So claiming the space that we have is really important. At the same time, also listening to our elders. It's good to create that intergenerational linkage that we learn from our elders, right? So that's also a great advice. Thank you so much, Joanne. It's really amazing to have you today. It's our first episode for the Untold Journey Youth series, but it's really interesting to have this conversation. And thank you so much. I'm really proud of you, what you are doing. I'm very proud about your journey and passing through those challenges. I know it will be difficult, but you are amazing. So I would like to thank you on behalf of the All African Conferences of Churches. Today we had this amazing woman, Juan Racheal from South Sudan. We have to celebrate this woman as she goes to her futures as well. So thank you so much. Before you leave, make sure to subscribe the All African Conferences of Churches YouTube channels. Stay tuned, stay connected for the next series as well. Thank you.